This is the Studebaker factory in the 1960s. Back in the day, Studebaker managed to create cars like the Lark, the Hawk, and especially the Avanti. In the 60s, people were still a valuable part of the manufacturing process. It was a time when people took pride in their work, and some employees stayed with the company for decades. You're now looking at the welding of the car's body. As you can see, almost everything was completely handmade, unlike today's factories. This factory in South Bend, Indiana, was basically a city within a city. Men and also women who knew their job exactly. Most line workers earned around $2 to $3 an hour in the early 1960s. At the time, it was a solid wage. A full-time Studebaker worker could take home around $90 to $120 per week, which was often enough to support a small family, pay a mortgage, and put food on the table. And remember, the average yearly income in 1960 was about $5,600 across the US. A Studebaker worker could make close to that, or even more, depending on overtime or skilled work. Now it was time for the paint work. As you can see, back in the 60s, they did even this part with their own hands, and not even wearing proper safety masks or something, can you imagine? But did you even know that Studebaker, the oldest car manufacturer in the US, was? No other US car company had deeper roots in transportation. Back in the 1960s, they worked together with Raymond Loewy. He was the best designer of the era. He created the iconic Studebaker Avanti. When it debuted in 1962, people didn't know what to think. Some dashboards looked more like aircraft cockpits. But later on, dealerships were flooded with interest. Studebaker had more than 20,000 pre-orders for the car, but the fiberglass body panels were difficult to mass produce. Some didn't fit right, others cracked. As a result, Studebaker couldn't build the Avanti fast enough to meet demand. In the end, they only made about 5,800 units during its short run in 1963 to 1964. This place in the factory is where giant 750-ton presses stamped steel into fenders and doors. Workers trimmed each section immediately into the exact size for the car. A thing most people don't know is that Studebaker created one of the fastest American production cars of its time. Fast enough to set 29 national speed records at the Bonneville Salt Flats. One version even hit over 170 miles per hour and once beat a Ferrari during timed runs. What made this even more impressive is that Studebaker didn't have the endless resources of Ford or GM. But with some things, they were ahead of their time. Just watch this clip that they used for a commercial.
It's a rainy day. Can your car stop in time? A 64 Studebaker can, because it's different by design.
As you can see, these workers were responsible for assembling the whole car. The roofing and the whole windshield were fixed here, but also the seats and dashboard, as you can see. Even managers walked on the floor. They knew people by name and had already selected people who were allowed to do the final check. That was the moment where the car was reviewed before being shipped out. Only the most experienced workers were trusted for that job. If they signed off on it, you knew the car was ready. A new Studebaker Lark started at about $1,800 to $2,300, depending on the model. That was a serious investment, sometimes half a year's salary. Now, as you can see, here's where the parts came together. Everything that made the car move was added here. The most important task here was to lower the engine carefully into the chassis of the car. Later on, the body was connected where typically 4 people helped each other. A crane slowly lowered the body because it had to line up exactly with the chassis. To help, there were guiding rails and ropes, but most of the work was done by hand. Workers stood around the car, watching every angle. They used their eyes, their hands, and their years of experience to guide the body into the right spot. If even one hole didn't line up, the whole thing had to be lifted back up and adjusted. When World War II broke out, the entire American car industry came to a halt. Factories that once built cars pivoted almost overnight into building tools of war. Studebaker didn't just support the war effort, they became a major part of it. One of Studebaker's most famous contributions was the US-6 military truck. This 2.5-ton truck was built to haul troops, equipment, and supplies over brutal terrain. In total, Studebaker produced over 200,000 of these tough trucks during the war. Many were sent overseas to support Allied forces, and thousands went to the Soviet Union. This assembly line machine helped the workers to install the wheels on the car. In this department, there were also working women. Studebaker was one of the companies where women had real factory jobs. These weren't easy jobs. It was hot, repetitive work, often on their feet all day, making sure every stitch was clean. The quality of Studebaker's interiors was often praised by magazines at the time. Much of that interior was handmade by women in the factory. Elvis Presley even owned one back in 1962. Actor and comedian Dick Van Dyke celebrated for his roles in Mary Poppins and The Dick Van Dyke Show, and rock star Alice Cooper also owned a 1963 Studebaker Avanti. Meanwhile, other workers started hooking things up. The fuel lines so gas could flow from the tank to the engine, the wiring for lights, signals, and the ignition, but also the steering column so the driver could control the wheels. Every part had to be connected by hand. If something was missed, the car wouldn't run right. Or worse, it could be dangerous. That's why the marriage process was trusted only to the most experienced workers in the factory. This job wasn't done by one person. It took a team. Usually, 3 to 4 people worked on each car during this step. Each person had a specific role. One handled the front, one handled the back, another focused on the wiring, and another helped guide the body into place. Something people don't even think about is that Studebaker had older factories that were expensive to run. They couldn't produce cars as cheaply as Ford or GM. So while the cars were well made, they just cost more to build. That meant smaller profits, or no profits at all. In some years, Studebaker actually lost money on every car sold. At the very end of the assembly line, one of the most trusted workers, usually someone older with silver hair and steady hands, would walk slowly around the finished car. They didn't rush. They looked at every corner, every seam. They ran their hand along the paint, checked the alignment of the doors, made sure the lights worked, and listened to the engine. And even after the cars were built, they were often put on a dynamometer, a machine like this that simulated driving at different speeds and loads. If anything rattled, whined, or slipped, it went back for fixing. The Avanti wasn't not only tested, but also proven. If anything felt off, even just a little, it went back. No shortcuts. This wasn't just a job to them, it was almost personal. But back then, safety wasn't the priority. Style, comfort, and performance came first. And the truth is, most car companies, not just Studebaker, saw seatbelts as optional extras rather than life-saving features. Although a Studebaker felt solid with heavy doors, you slammed shut and the whole car shook. It gave you the feeling of safety, like a tank. But modern cars are safer, even though they're lighter. Today's vehicles use crumple zones, areas of the car designed to fold and absorb impact in a crash. In the 1960s, that technology logically didn't exist. Cars were stiff, and during a crash, the energy from the impact transferred directly to the passengers, not the car. In 1960, most Studebakers didn't even come with standard seatbelts. They were optional. Some buyers didn't want them at all. There were no airbags, no side curtain protection, no automatic tensioners. If you hit something, your body hit the steering wheel, the windshield, or even the metal dashboard. And dashboards back then weren't padded. They were made of hard metal and sharp edges. In December 1963, Studebaker made a painful decision to shut down their main factory in South Bend, Indiana. Thousands of workers lost their jobs. A town that had depended on the company for decades went quiet. It wasn't just a business move, it was a loss of identity for lots of people. Studebaker still had a smaller factory in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada. So they shifted production there and continued building cars in low numbers. They no longer had the flashy models like the Avanti or Hawk, just the Lark and Cruiser, simple, solid cars. But by March 1966, it was over. The last Studebaker rolled off the line in Canada, a 4-door cruiser. And just like that, after 114 years in transportation, Studebaker was done. Unlike companies like Dodge or Jeep, Studebaker didn't get bought out or revived. No one kept the brand alive after 1966. There was no parent company to reboot it later. But there is some good news. A well-kept or fully restored Studebaker Avanti can sell for $30,000 to $70,000. Insane, right? Ultra-rare models or low-mileage originals can go even higher. The 1956 to 58 Golden Hawk often sell for $25,000 to $50,000 nowadays, depending on condition and options. The 1960s Lark typically sell for $10,000 to $20,000. Believe it or not, it's not just the cars that are valuable. Smaller Studebaker items are also in demand. Original hubcaps and emblems depending on rarity, these can sell for $100 to $500 per set. Vintage Studebaker dealership signs or showroom posters can go for several hundred to a few $1,000s, especially if in great condition. Unused factory parts like gauges, radios, and trim pieces can be surprisingly expensive, sometimes more than modern parts. The reason it is so much worth today is because they made everything handmade. Just like a watch, these are the things collectors want because of the detail in the product and the unmatched quality.